Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive with us. This time, we're looking at Bengali poetry.
Ooh, exciting.
Yeah, and focusing in on a contemporary poet, Mohammad Sheikh Shahinur Rahman.
Okay.
And what we have is this website dedicated to his poetry. But it's got all this biographical information, too.
Interesting.
And it just makes you wonder about, like, the connections
Mm.
between his life and, the themes that he explores in his work.
Well, and what's so fascinating to me is just how much he's produced. The website lists 725 poems,
Wow.
and he's only been active for like 2 years and 4 months or something.
That's almost a poem a day.
It really is, yeah.
So is it quantity or is it quality? Or is it somehow magically both?
Yeah, that's the question, isn't it?
Yeah. So before we get lost in the numbers,
Mm-hmm.
who is this guy? Mohammad Sheikh Shahinur Rahman. What makes his story so intriguing?
Well, according to the website, he was born in Kishorganj, Bangladesh. And here's where it gets interesting. His educational background is this fascinating mix of like technical and scientific and artistic. We're talking degrees in software engineering, medical neuroscience, A&E anatomy.
Wow. So he's like that walking embodiment of the left brain, right brain.
Totally.
But I'm curious, do you think this diverse background actually influences his poetry at all?
I think it has to, right? I mean, imagine if his understanding of neuroscience like shapes how he portrays human emotion or consciousness in his poems.
So he could be weaving these like really complex scientific concepts into something that's accessible to poetry.
Yeah, and we could look for metaphors related to neural pathways.
Wow.
Or the intricacies of the human brain.
Wow, that'd be incredible. Like a whole new dimension to his work. Okay, so we've got this like prolific poet, super interesting background that spans science and art. But what about the poetry itself? What can you tell us about his style?
Well, just from the titles, you can see the range. Like in the last few weeks, he's written poems called Mistakes Among Flowers, The Shadow of Dictatorship in the Shade of Freedom, and Billions of Years of Waiting.
Those are some titles.
Right.
You've got to wonder how his work fits into Bengali poetry.
Yeah.
I mean, we know it's got this long history. So what sets his poems apart?
That's a great question. Bengali poetry is known for its lyrical beauty, its engagement with like social and political themes, often drawing inspiration from nature, mythology, and spiritual concepts. And from what we've seen so far, Rahman's work seems to tap into a lot of these traditional elements, but potentially adds his own unique twist through that scientific lens.
Yeah, it's like this blending of traditional forms.
Yeah.
With modern sensibilities.
Yeah, and we might even see some subtle references to scientific principles or discoveries woven into the fabric of his verses.
That would be so cool, like almost creating a new genre. There's one more detail about this website that's been bugging me. It mentioned some other books by Shahinur Rahman, but the titles are, well, unexpected, to say the least. We're talking How to Maintain a Happy Sexual Life, Bug Bounty, Beginner to Master, and even How to Last Long Time in Sex.
Yeah, that was a surprise. It really makes you wonder, are we dealing with one individual exploring all of these interests, or is this a case of multiple authors sharing the same name?
It's like we stumbled onto a literary mystery. And part of me really wants to go down that rabbit hole. But I also wonder if we're getting a little sidetracked. Our focus is supposed to be on his poetry, right?
Right, you are. As intriguing as that mystery is, our priority should be to uncover what makes his poetry unique. And with 725 poems, I think we've got our work cut out for us.
We do?
Yeah, it's like we're standing at the foot of a mountain range, and each poem is a peak waiting to be explored.
Where do we even begin?
Right.
With such a vast landscape.
Well, maybe we could start by actually reading some of his work.
Yeah.
I mean, we've been talking around the poetry, analyzing titles and speculating about influences, but haven't you been itching to just dive into the words themselves?
Totally. I mean, it's like we've been admiring the cover of a book without opening it to see what treasures lie within.
Exactly.
So should we pick one of these intriguing titles?
Yeah.
See if we can find a translation online.
Let's do it.
How about Mistakes Among Flowers?
Ooh, good choice.
Just evokes both beauty and imperfection.
Yeah.
Which really resonates with me.
Yeah, the idea of mistakes. Existing within something as inherently beautiful as flowers. I don't know, there's something about that. It suggests a very nuanced perspective on life, like a recognition that even in perfection, there's room for flaws. Yeah. And that those flaws might even enhance the overall beauty.
Okay, I think I found a translated excerpt online.
Okay.
Let me read it to you. It starts like this. Petals unfurl, a symphony of hues, crimson and gold, tapestry of dews. Yet amidst this splendor, a blemish appears, a petal torn, a testament to tears.
Wow. Even in translation, you can feel the lyrical quality of his language. That image of a torn petal. As a testament to tears, it's so evocative, so poignant. It speaks to the fragility of beauty, the idea that even the most delicate things can bear the weight of sorrow.
And there's this sense of contrast, too. The poem opens with such vibrant imagery, a symphony of hues, but then it immediately introduces this element of imperfection,
Right,
of damage.
light and darkness,
Yeah.
coexisting.
It's like he's reminding us that beauty often arises from contrast.
And that connects back to what we were discussing earlier about his scientific background.
Oh, yeah.
Perhaps his understanding of biology, of the natural world, informs his appreciation for this delicate balance between growth and decay, perfection and imperfection.
Yeah, and I'm struck by the use of sensory details, too. We have visual imagery with the colors and the tapestry of dews,
Yeah.
but then there's also this implied sense of touch with the torn petal.
It's like he's inviting us to experience the poem
Yeah.
with all of our senses. And
Yeah.
that's a hallmark of good poetry, isn't it? To create a multi-sensory experience, to transport you beyond the words on the page
Absolutely.
into a world of feeling and imagination. I'm really curious to see how the poem unfolds, how he develops this idea of mistakes among flowers.
Me too. But even from this short excerpt, we're getting a glimpse into his style, this blending of lyrical beauty with a sharp awareness of life's complexities.
Yeah, and it makes me think about those other book titles, the ones about relationships and sexuality.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe they're not as disconnected from his poetry as we initially thought. Maybe
Yeah.
there's a common thread running through all of his work,
Yeah.
like a deep curiosity about human experience in all its messy and magnificent forms.
So he's exploring different facets of the human condition
Right.
through different lenses.
Right.
Poetry might be his way of grappling with beauty, loss,
Yeah.
the natural world.
Yeah.
While those other books might be his way of delving into
Yeah.
the complexities of human relationship.
And intimacy. And
Yeah.
maybe, just maybe, there are these hidden connections, subtle echoes between these seemingly disparate works.
It's like he's created this web of interconnected ideas,
Yeah.
and he's inviting us to trace the threads and make our own connections.
I love that.
This deep dive is turning out to be much more layered and intriguing than I anticipated.
I agree.
And we're just scratching the surface.
Yeah, imagine what other insights are waiting for us as we continue to explore his work.
I can't wait. But before we go any further, there's one question that's been lingering in my mind. Since we started this whole deep dive,
Okay.
we've been talking about the quantity of his output. 725 poems in a little over 2 years. It's an incredible feat of productivity.
It is, but you're wondering about the quality.
Yes,
Yeah.
if such prolific output could come at the expense of depth.
Or artistry.
Exactly. Is it even possible to maintain a high level of quality when you're producing work at such a rapid pace?
Right.
Or is there a risk of dilution?
Of spreading yourself too thin. It's a valid concern, There's this common perception that true artistry requires time, meticulous crafting, and maybe even like a touch of suffering for the sake of one's art.
Right.
But does that necessarily mean that prolific output equals diminished quality?
I don't know. I mean, history is full of artists who were incredibly prolific and produced masterpieces. I mean, think of Mozart, Picasso, Shakespeare. They all created an astounding amount of work,
Right.
and much of it is considered brilliant.
You're right. There's no one-size-fits-all formula for artistic genius.
Right.
Some artists thrive on a steady stream of inspiration. They channel their creativity into a constant outpouring of work.
Yeah.
Others might take a more measured approach, spending years refining a single piece.
So maybe it comes down to the individual artist's process, their own internal rhythm of creation. Perhaps for someone like Shahinur Rahman, writing a poem a day is simply his way of engaging with the world, processing his thoughts and emotions. It's not about achieving perfection with each piece, but about maintaining a consistent creative flow.
Yeah, and that in itself can be a form of artistic discipline, to commit to the practice of creation, to show up day after day and let the words flow, even when inspiration might be elusive.
Yeah?
It's like building a muscle, strengthening your creative voice through constant use.
But it also raises another question. If he's writing so much, is he really able to give each poem the attention it deserves? Is there a risk of some poems feeling rushed or underdeveloped?
It's possible, but we also have to consider that artistic evolution happens over time.
Yeah,
Not every poem a poet writes will be a masterpiece.
of course not.
Some might be experimental, exploring new forms or ideas.
Right.
Others might serve as stepping stones, leading to more mature and refined works.
So it's like viewing his entire body of work as a journey, with peaks and valleys, moments of brilliance and moments of exploration.
Exactly.
And maybe even the poems that aren't perfect still hold value, offering glimpses into his development as a poet.
Yeah, it's like having access to an artist's sketchbook, seeing the raw ideas and the tentative strokes that eventually lead to a finished painting.
I like that.
And who knows, some of those rough sketches might hold a unique charm, revealing a different side of the artist's personality or process.
This has been a fascinating conversation. I mean, we've gone from uncovering a mystery about a potentially multifaceted poet to exploring the very nature of creativity and artistic output.
It has been quite a journey.
And I have to say, I'm walking away from this deep dive
Yeah.
with a renewed appreciation for the complexity of the creative process.
Me too. And I think there's an important takeaway for our listeners as well.
What's that?
You know, we shouldn't judge a creative work solely on its quantity, or even its perceived perfection instead. Let's approach art with an open mind, a willingness to explore the artist's journey, and an appreciation for the diverse ways in which creativity manifests itself.
Absolutely. And in the case of Mohammad Sheikh Shahinur Rahman, I'm definitely intrigued to explore more of his work, whether he's a master of multiple disciplines or simply a poet with an unquenchable thirst for knowledge and expression. His story is a testament to the boundless possibilities of human creativity.
It really is. And who knows, maybe this deep dive will inspire some of our listeners to unlock their own creative potential, to embrace their passions, and to explore the world with curiosity and a sense of wonder.
On that note, we'll wrap up our deep dive into the world of Mohammad Sheikh Shahinur Rahman. We hope you've enjoyed the journey as much as we have. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep those creative sparks flying in